We've got two teams who like to shoot the three and like to play high-tempo basketball. What's the worst that could happen? We get entertained. We're talking about in a crossover edition of Locked On Cougars and Locked On Badgers.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everybody? I'm Jake Hatch, host of Locked On Cougars, covering BYU every single day. That right there is Ryan Harings, who covers the Wisconsin Badgers on Locked On Badgers every single day. And a big thank you to all of you for making Locked On Cougars and Locked On Badgers your first listen of the day. We're proud to be part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where they like to say it is your team every day. And Ryan Harings, right out of the chute, BYU is advanced in the NCAA tournament for the first time since some guy named Jimmer Fredette was playing for the Cougars. So here's my question for you. These two teams, BYU and Wisconsin, play high-tempo basketball. Could be actually one of the highest-tempo games we see the entire tournament. What is your belief level we're not going to see a 55-50 game at the end of this one?
Probably not, but listen, Wisconsin has been playing high tempo all year, and then in the Big Ten title game, they scored like 53, right? So, like, sports have a weird way of showing up in random spots, but no, like, listen, first of all, congratulations to the BYU fans. Great win over VCU. That's a tough team. You guys really look good. There's a lot of Wisconsin fans that have texted me and said, why do we have to play them next round? So, congrats on the advancement since Fredette. That's amazing. But no, this is two teams that want to push tempo a little bit. They will hunt early shots. Both teams will hunt early shots. They're not afraid to take good shots early. Both teams will let it fly from three. Both teams have prolific scorers. Yeah, I think this is probably a game that goes up and down.
All right, so I'm calling them the Johns, Tonje and Tonje Blackwell. They seem to be the two guys who make this Wisconsin Badgers team go. Tonje Blackwell had a really, really good performance against Montana. Give me a sense for Cougar fans out there of what these two bring to the table that Cougar fans will want to watch in this matchup.
Yeah, let's start with Blackwell. So Blackwell's an interesting player, sophomore, didn't redshirt last year, really, really savvy. High IQ guy, shoots well, gets in the paint, physical guard. He likes to play physical. He plays football or basketball a little like football is what I was going to say. He plays football like basketball. So I think I'm back. He'll push off sometimes. He'll get a little handsy, but a great all-around player when he's engaged, shoots it pretty well, gets in the paint. Really nice mid-range game. One of the only Badgers on this team that has a pretty nice mid-range game. And then Tonje has just been electric this year, right? He came in as a transfer, 6-year guy, and it was going to be this is going to be a good floor spacer for Wisconsin. Really good shooter, but I don't know if there's much else there. And then this year, again, much like Blackwell, gets in the paint, plays under control, plays really physical, really tough shot maker. There's been a ton of games this year where teams have just blanketed him and he's step back three in a face. Both those guys, man, they have a tendency to hit tough shots. They get in the paint. They hit free throws at a high clip. They draw fouls. Really, really dynamic offensive wings there that you have to contend with every day.
Now, obviously, you mentioned these two teams. They like to hunt their shots early on in games. They don't mind if they have an open shot. They feel like it's a good shot. They will hoist it up. BYU does it a lot. And there's some of those every so often that's a no, yes type play. But more often than not, when you have good players like a Tonje or Blackwell, it seems like they're right more than they're wrong in that respect. What is it about the style that Wisconsin has played all year long that's allowed these guys to succeed at such a high level?
Yeah, that's a great question because if BYU fans are smart fans, like Wisconsin for a long time has been a grinded out team on the basketball court. Like we're going to play defense. We're going to take 30 seconds off the shot clock. We're going to set basketball back 20 years, but we'll win. So it's okay. Greg Gard has done a phenomenal job this year. This is an entirely new system. They're spacing the floor. They're hunting early shots. Players are playing with confidence. And with that, you had a really good point. It's the no, yes shot. With that, you have to live with some of that, right? You have to empower players to take shots. And there are moments where Tonje Blackwell will I don't know about that shot. Tonje, I don't know. But the players are playing with confidence. They're running to spots. They're finding shots open in transition. And here's the real key to the Badgers offense. They have 2 7-footers who can space the floor and pass, right? So they'll throw it into Steven Crowell, who's their 7-foot center, 50-year guy, really good passer. And you can't double him. So if you can't play post defense, he's going to score on you in the post. If you double him, there's 4 shooters around him now to kick it out. It's a really dynamic inside-outside offense that teams have had a hard time all year adjusting to. It's been a lot of pick your poison. Do we take Tonje away and then play one-on-one in the post, or do we double the post and then we're going to have an open shooter in the corner? It's really a great spacing offense, and Egor has done a tremendous job this year getting those players to buy in, play with confidence, and take those shots when they present them.
Now, often coaches will adapt a style as a coach, and they're very reticent to change that. I've watched enough of Wisconsin basketball over the years, and I don't claim to have watched a ton of them, but Egor had a very grinded out style for a long time. What was the impetus that that caused him to go to this more of a 4 or 5 man out type lineup, and really just a run and gun style that's really fun to watch?
Yeah, I think it's a couple things. I think, and you got to give coaches a lot of credit for adjusting when they do, because coaches are pretty stubborn, right? So I think some of it is he just saw the efficiency of the 3-point shot, right? It's an efficient way to score the ball. And then he brought in Kirk Penny, who was a longtime great Badger, came from New Zealand, and Kirk Penny kind of knows this style. So Penny came in almost as an offensive coordinator for the Badgers and said, we're going to hunt efficient shots. Efficient shots, as the NBA has found out, as a lot of college basketball has found out, it's shots at the rim and it's shots from three. Now, it's not that dramatic for Wisconsin. Like I said, Blackwell hit mid-range shots. Tonje will hit mid-range shots. But there was a desire, and they talked about it in the coaching staff. We're going to hunt efficient shots this year, so we're going to shoot more threes. And then the second part of this is they have a roster that shoots, right? So some of it is maybe, hey, consciously we want to adjust, and then some of it is let's play to the strengths of our roster, and the roster is full of shooters this year. So I think that's going to continue, but you have to have a roster of shooters if you're going to play a 5-out system. So I think it's those two things, right? A conscious desire to get more efficient, and then having a roster that they built full of shooting.
Now, you mentioned Crowell just a little bit earlier, true 7-footer. BYU, I'll kindly, they're undersized in their front court. Keba Keita, their starting center, stands 6'9". Their backup big, Fousseyni Traore, stands 6'6". So my question for you is, are you expecting maybe more of an inside, as you mentioned, inside out type alignment for this, because you want a guy like Crowell to potentially dominate inside?
Yeah, that's a great question. And if you notice, I smirked a little bit because Badger fans have been clamoring for a little bit more inside out. And so Crowell's interesting. Crowell is split among Badger fans a little bit because he's not the most athletic guy. At times it looks like he's a little mechanical, so athletic bigs, even if they're a little undersized, can give him some trouble. That has been an area where he has struggled at times. And BYU does have athleticism in the post, even if it's not true size. Yeah. So there's times where it feels like the size should play up, and because of athleticism on the other side, it doesn't. And then there's also times where this is the downside of that no, yes shooting. Sometimes you take such early shots that you don't establish the post even when you should. So I think Wisconsin will have success down there. Crowell is a very efficient, very good player. But it probably won't be as impactful as on paper a 7-footer against a 6'9" guy.
Now, BYU's last two opponents, speaking of VCU and obviously Houston, have been defensive, just very stout defensive squads. So can you give Cougar fans a sense of Wisconsin, their defensive tendencies, how they look on the defensive side of the ball?
Yeah, so let's start with the negatives. There's not a lot of rim protection. They have a pretty springy forward coming off the bench, Xavier Amos, who transferred in this year. Amos, he gives you rim protection, but Crowell's not a shot blocker. Nolan Winters, the other, their forward, their 4, isn't really a shot blocker. It's been a bit of an issue this year. It's been a bit of an issue for several years. If you're able to get in the paint, if you're able to drive the rim, there's not a ton of resistance at that rim for you. Man-to-man defense, almost 99.9% of the time, they'll very occasionally spring a zone on you, but it's almost entirely man. They've hedged more this year, but they'll play a lot of drop coverage on the pick and roll. It's a solid man-to-man defense. It's not elite, and at times they have struggled, and this is going to play into BYU. At times they have struggled giving up open perimeter shots. So this is an offensive-driven team that is a solid defensive team.
Hey, sounds very familiar. So we'll get a sense of what to expect from BYU coming up next. Crossover edition here of Locked On Cougars and Locked On Badgers. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Nissan. Now, Nissan's here for you guys. Obviously, with all of the things going on, we've been talking all the time about the Nissan Armada of the week, but we talk about the stats because numbers don't lie. When it comes to the all-new Nissan Armada Pro 4X, the numbers are on an MVP level. With the ability to tow up to 8,500 pounds, it can quite literally carry the whole team plus the gear wherever you need to go. It's powered by a twin-turbo V6 engine, delivering the strength and performance to handle highways, back roads, and everything in between. With room for up to 8 people, the Armada Pro 4X is built for big crews, big adventures, and even bigger memories. Whether you're exploring off-road trails or rolling up to the arena, the Armada Pro 4X brings power, versatility, and style wherever you go. Take your adventures to new heights right now in the all-new Nissan Armada Pro 4X. Learn more at nissanusa.com. One more time, that's nissanusa.com. Jake Hatch of Locked On Cougars, Ryan Harings of Locked On Badgers, talking all things BYU and Wisconsin. And Ryan, I'm going to let you get your questions in. I kind of dominated that first segment. What do you want to know? What do you want to know about the Cougars? What can we answer for Wisconsin fans?
And I got questions. I want to start with Richie Saunders.
Okay.
How do you guard this guy? So the shot is so quick, right? So for Badger fans who maybe not super familiar, leading score for BYU, 16.1 per game, shooting 43% from three. Lightning quick shot, great balance, but also gets to the rim, can finish in a variety of ways. What have the teams that have had success against them done against Richie?
Biggest thing is he's very unorthodox in how he plays. If you watch him, he doesn't look like that's the guy. That's the thing. That's the thing I can say about him is he's not going to walk off the bus and you're say, hey, that's BYU's leading scorer. The one thing teams have had success with is bodying him up at times. I look at, for example, Houston. In both matchups that BYU played the Houston Cougars this year, Houston just bodied him up and locked him up. That's the thing about this. If you can play lock-up defense on him, he struggles to create his own shot. His best games come when his teammates are teeing him up for catch and shoot threes, the ability to cut off of somebody and get to the rim and score that way. He struggles to really kind of create, I think, what is truly his own shot. So if you can get him locked up that way, that slows him down.
One of the big things they talk about in March is can you win in a variety of ways, right? We talked a little bit about the run and gun. Does BYU have to play at a high tempo and score quite a few points to win, or can they win a defensive battle with Wisconsin?
So they have actually proven down the stretch this season, they've been a couple of games where they've gotten it done on defense. And quite honestly, you look at that VCU game, go back and watch the final, I'd say about 10 minutes of the first half of that VCU game. VCU came in with this vaunted defense. The expectation was they were going to be able to slow BYU down. Well, BYU flipped the tables on them and really locked VCU down in the second part of that first half. So like the 10-minute mark to halftime, BYU built an 11-point lead with a fairly efficient offense, not an elite offense, but they got it done defensively. And that's something we've seen major strides as the season has progressed here for BYU is the defense has gotten better and better. Much like you, I wouldn't say it's an elite defense. They are still very much an offensive-driven team, but the defense has made major strides, and it's been a big reason why they've won some of these games. They went into the Big 12 tournament on an 8-game winning streak, and you don't do that with at least some modicum of defense.
And we talked a little bit about Krell. For the Badgers, Krell's really a key. When he plays well, he doesn't have to be the best player, but when he plays well, the Badgers usually win. Post defense for BYU, a little undersized. How's the athleticism there? I saw Traore today. Keita, it looks like an athletic front court. Have they struggled with size, and is there depth behind them if they get in foul trouble?
Elite size they do not have, and quite honestly, beyond the two of them, they don't have much depth. So if they do get into foul trouble, that is a concern for BYU. The one thing I will say is they've been very good, speaking of Keba Keita and Fousseyni Traore, is they have been very careful about not fouling when they don't need to, taking those cheap fouls that will get you on the bench, and that can be a problem. Keba Keita, for any Wisconsin Badger fan, you're going to see him walk out on the court and say, holy smokes, who is that guy? He looks like he's chiseled out of granite. He's got elite athleticism. His brother is actually a professional volleyball player in Korea, of all places, and he has got a patented ability to swat a basketball seemingly every game that has the crowd, everybody in attendance, the spectators, the announcers all say, wow, that was special. So he's got the ability to protect the rim despite standing 6'9" because of the fact he can jump out of the gym. So I really like what he has offered. I wouldn't say it's elite rim protection, but it's much better than BYU's had over the past 3 or 4 years coming into this season.
Yeah, there's a lot of Badger fans who would love to have some of that rim protection. So, watching BYU, there's one guy that, there's a lot of players on that team that are really good and they catch your eye. But Egor Demin, the big point guard, kind of controls the tempo, can get in the paint, really good passer, but maybe not the most efficient shooter. How do you play him? Do you play him to shoot the ball and just kind of try to take away everything else?
Uh, Here's the thing. If I were defending him, that's what I would do. I would try and essentially dare him to shoot. But the one thing he showed against VCU is he was on and he was hitting 3-pointers, and he shot 27% coming into that VCU game from three. And teams have dared him at times to shoot. And the problem is he's not been able to make them pay enough to really respect that. So the big question mark is, yes, can he finally prove himself? VCU's one thing. Wisconsin's another level here. It's a 3 seed versus an 11 seed. Can he show himself capable of hitting shots against the likes of a Wisconsin Badger squad? That's a major question mark. The other thing I will say about Egor, he's had turnover issues this season at times when teams get up in his grill. He's only 18 years old. He's very young. He's considered to be a one and done. We'll see if he ultimately decides to leave for the NBA draft, but he's a bit wiry. But if you get up into him, you can cause some turnover issues, and I would expect that Wisconsin will absolutely try and hunt him in that regard.
Defensively, BYU, top zone today. Like, what are you typically playing? Is it a mix? Is it a match? Like, so here's the thing: Wisconsin hasn't played against much zone this year, and at times they've looked a little discombobulated against it.
BYU will play anything they feel like will work. Will Voigt is their defensive coordinator, the associate head coach of this team, and he has a patented what he calls a pill and switch defense that he's worked on in the pro game. BYU tried to implement it and make it like their base defense this year early on in the season, and it didn't work. So they decided, you know what? We're gonna make it a bit of a hybrid. So they will go to zone. They will go to man. They'll play this switching defense as well, and you'll see them morph between it at times, possession to possession. The zone seems to have been the most effective of late in terms of a team like Wisconsin that can get hot from the perimeter. That seems to be BYU's best ability to defend the perimeter. I know that sounds weird because usually zones get torched by elite three-point shooting, but they have proven capable in that zone of defending it for stretches. But you will see a match of anything they feel like can work in the middle of a game that can give them a chance.
What's the thing that terrifies you as a BYU fan? What scares you about your team?
The fact that they can be good from the 3-point line one game and the very next game struggle. I'll point at the Big 12 championship. So the tournament that BYU played, they beat Iowa State in the quarterfinals, went 18 of 36 from three, and they like to hoist up 30 plus threes on average, at least every single game. They shot 50% from the field in that game, and they needed every one of them to outlast Iowa State 96-92. Very next night, Big 12 tournament semifinal against Houston. They go 6 of 24, if I recall correctly, all the way at 21 and change percent. The consistency. They are a team that has averaged 37.8% coming into this game all season long. They need to stay steady on that number if they want to have a chance. But the problem is it seems to go up and down game to game.
Oh, yeah. Listen, you're talking to a team that did the same thing in the Big Ten tournament. So, again, so much of these teams are mirror images of each other. Wisconsin hit 19 threes against UCLA, and then 2 games later couldn't hit a shot against Michigan. So, I'm curious on your take on this because I've asked a couple people this, and everybody seems to be different. Is the altitude a thing? Like, does that actually matter?
I think it matters to a degree, and it could matter in this type of game. And what I mean by that is I've lived at altitude my entire life. I grew up in this state in Utah. I hear from athletes that come to Utah that if you come in and you're out of shape, it's going to get to you. The other thing that will get to you is if you're playing at a high tempo, and in basketball, that means the up and down nature of what these two teams will do. Eventually in the second half, it starts that lack of oxygen starts to catch up with you a little bit. BYU, Provo's located at 4,500 feet. Denver's at a mile high, so it's a little bit higher than Provo, but that's negligible for BYU as compared to Wisconsin. I don't know. You guys over 100 feet in elevation? What are we looking at?
It's like 860. So we're just under 1,000. Yeah, it's not very high there. It's a pretty flat farmland of a state outside of the Wisconsin Dells.
Yes, I've been to Madison once. I went to when BYU played there in 2016. I made the trek to Camp Randall, had the time of my life. I will just say this: Wisconsin fans, y'all are the best. I had an incredible time in Madison. That's just an aside, but the bigger point to be made is, I think as the second half wears on, if this truly is a back and forth game up and down the court, I think it could factor into this one. But first half, I don't expect it to have much of an impact at all.
Last question here, and then I think we're going to get into some predictions, keys of the game. But who is the guy on BYU? So we've talked about, I think, the stars on both sides. Who's the guy on BYU? And I'll give you the Wisconsin one, too, if you want it.
Yeah.
That Badger fans don't know, but if BYU wins, they might walk away saying, that dude killed us.
Mawit Mag. Mawit is a grad transfer from Rutgers, actually a Big Ten kid. And Kevin Willard from Maryland last year called him the best defender in college basketball. He was a guy early on the season that couldn't find his way off the bench for whatever reason. He got inserted into the lineup against Wyoming after Richie Saunders suffered a concussion. And ever since then, Mawit has been in the starting lineup for BYU. And simply put, he is a defensive eraser. He's a 3-and-D guy of the highest order. You're not going to see him do a ton offensively, but what he prides himself in doing is locking opposing teams' best big. So whether it's a Tonje or a Tonje Blackwell, whichever one he's on, he's going to endeavor to do his best to make sure that they do not get at BYU. And he could be a major key factor here for BYU if they want to win this game. Who's the guy from Wisconsin?
I think you look at a guy like Carter Gilmore coming off the bench. So Gilmore he's the type of kid that, man, like you just root for. He was a walk-on. He loves the program, in-state kid. First several years, like people were like, this guy can't play. Like he can't shoot. And this year, like for a little while, people were calling him Gilly James because suddenly he's a baller. And it's just been such a great story. He loves the program. He bleeds for the state. Okay. He's just that type of kid on every team that's just is endearing to the fans. And then in this game against Montana, Montana cut it to 4. Gilmore's the one that hit the big 3. Not Tonje, not Blackwell. Gilmore stepped up, hit a big 3. And the very next possession drew a charge on Pridgeon, which was Montana's best player. He's just that do-everything kind of glue guy that the fans love. And he's shot it really well this year. So Carter Gilmore's a guy coming off the bench that's had a big impact for Wisconsin this year.
Well, see, that guy was Richie Saunders for the last 2 years until this year, when he became the star player that he is for BYU. John Rothstein, for the last couple of years, has always called him the glue guy of glue guys, speaking of Richie Saunders. But now he's morphed into this star player. So I think, we talk about the mirror images. These two teams, man, they got a lot going for them. All right. So we'll finish up this crossover edition of Locked On Cougars and Locked On Badgers next. Get some keys to the game, some predictions, and a whole lot more. Stay with us. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at 5 Hour Energy. Obviously, daylight savings may have snuck up on you, and if you're feeling that lost hour of sleep, 5 Hour Energy has your back. But more importantly, if you're staying up late watching the NCAA Tournament, squeezing in a round of golf after work, or just trying to keep up with your busy day, 5 Hour Energy gives you that quick, refreshing pick-me-up whenever you need it. Obviously, with the madness going on, you're watching basketball seemingly from sun up to sundown. If you need that extra boost to finish off the day, do it with our friends over at 5 Hour Energy. Helps you keep up with everything going on beyond the basketball as well. So head to 5hourenergy.com to find over 15 flavors to choose from, including watermelon, blue raspberry, and peach mango, and a whole lot more. You can even build your own 12-pack or 24-pack and have it delivered right to your door. Need one now? You can grab a 5 Hour Energy shot at your local grocery or convenience store. They're everywhere. Stock up today and stay energized. We get started once again at 5hourenergy.com. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends over at the Salt Lake Bees. They have a new hive. Experience the thrill of America's favorite pastime at the ballpark at America First Square in downtown Daybreak here in the Salt Lake Valley. My friends, join us this season for professional baseball, family-friendly entertainment, and unforgettable memories. Opening day is coming up Tuesday, April 8th, with giveaways every night during the first homestand. Plus, enjoy fireworks and drone shows, Bark at the Park games, Sunday brunch, and fun theme nights all season long out at the ballpark at America First Square. Single game tickets are now on sale. Visit slbs.com for tickets and the full schedule. Join the Bees this season at the ballpark at America First Square. Visit slbs.com to get started today. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars and Locked On Badgers your first listen of the day. Ryan, I know that you have your insider group for Locked On Badgers. I got my one for Locked On Cougars. Just a shameless plug. Join up. We love passing along our insider tidbits for both the Badgers and the Cougars. Link is in the show notes below for both of these fine programs. So join up and have some fun with us. And the best part is, it comes to your phone in the form of a text message. I don't know any other insider group that sends you a text message with the insider intel that you crave.
Absolutely. Yep. Completely agree. It's a really cool, fun group. And it's a great way to build community as well. Yep. So, yep, absolutely.
All right. So before we go here, Ryan, we've talked a lot, as you mentioned, about the star players, defensive alignments, how these two teams seem to be kind of mirror images of one another. So my question, and you can see it in the rundown if you're watching this on YouTube, who blinks first? What are you looking from your side of things that will cause Wisconsin to break through here?
You know, Wisconsin this year has done an elite job at drawing fouls, which is one of the reasons I asked, depth in the front court. Can Wisconsin get them into foul trouble? Tonje is incredible at the line. The Wisconsin Badgers lead the NCAA in free throw shooting percentage. They're just absolutely lights out 1 through 7. Basically, everybody shoots at a high clip. And Tonje, Blackwell, I mentioned physical. They get in the paint. They play off 2 feet. They get into bodies. If they can get a couple of those post players, one of those post players into foul trouble, then you have 2 7-footers in Winter and in Crowell. I think that's a big key to the game. And Wisconsin has generally this year in the games they've won that free throw battle. They've got the other team into foul trouble. And then Tonje's just living at the line at the end of the game. So to me, fouls, free throw shooting, those kind of things have typically gone Wisconsin's way when they've won. And then the other one, I think it just goes both ways. And we'll kick it back to you. Both teams need to shoot well, right? Like, it's simple, but these are 2 shooting teams. And you live by the 3, you die by the 3. That doesn't just mean shooting well. That also means defending well, forcing tougher shots. But yeah, who's going to shoot better, right? It's as simple as that sometimes, especially with 2 perimeter-oriented teams.
Yeah, which team can get hands in the face of the other guys? You're right, because you can hunt shots as much as you want, and when you're hunting them, you're looking for the best shot you can find. Well, guess what? You got to force them into the, as you mentioned, those tougher shots where it's not the great shot. You say, hey, you can take the good shot. We're not giving you the great shot. And that's I think where this lies. Which team can make more of those good shots versus the great shots? I think that's a real thing in the margins. You mentioned the free throw shooting. Interesting to hear that Wisconsin has been elite at free throw shooting. BYU, it's been a struggle at times. They've had games where they're really, really good from the free throw line, but they lost against their arch rival Utah in Salt Lake City simply because they could not make free throws. I think they were sub 50% in that game alone. So free throw shooting, a major, major key for BYU. The other one I will add, and I think that it's the same thing for Wisconsin, these are 2 high-level, high-powered offenses. BYU's turnover issues at times have been a major reason why teams will win in the margins of these contests. BYU averages usually between 10 and 12 turnovers, but if you can force them beyond that 12 turnover mark, that's when you start to see those points off turnovers really make a difference in the matchups against the Cougars. I can think back to, I mentioned Iowa State earlier on. BYU went to Ames and beat Iowa State in Ames. Ryan, get this, despite having 29 turnovers. I will live the rest of my days and never see a team overcome that many turnovers. It'd been multiple decades since it had happened across college basketball, but when turnovers have been an issue for BYU, it's been a major, major reason why they have lost some of the games they have lost this year.
29 is wild. You know, that next practice was literally just pass, cut, pivot, pass, cut, pivot. Like, that's wild. I would say this on the turnover battle. Wisconsin doesn't turn it over much, but they also are not the type of defense that forces a lot of turnovers, right? They don't have elite perimeter defenders. They're not going to press unless they're forced to do it maybe at the end of the game. There's not going to be any exotic zones. Again, the shot blockers aren't really there. It's more of a positional defense. So I don't think this is going to be a game where BYU is going to struggle with turnovers unless they're just characteristically sloppy, which I don't think they're going to be because they look pretty locked in against VCU. So I don't think that's going to be a thing. I do think Wisconsin at times has struggled locating shooters on the perimeter, which watching BYU today was slightly terrifying. I got multiple texts from Badger fans saying it was just like the scared emoji. So can Wisconsin lock in a little bit more there? They have, as the season has gone on, gotten a little better defensively. They progressed there. So that's got to be a hope for Badger fans. But I think it's just going to be a great game, man. I think these are 2 pretty evenly matched teams. I haven't seen a line out yet. I haven't even looked. I don't know if it is, but I can't imagine it's more than 3 either way.
Well, so the early line that I saw from our friends at FanDuel had it Wisconsin 1.5. So it's right there. So I'm fully expecting this to be one of those games. It could be one of the all-timers of this tournament if it lives up to the billing. But there's a part of me that thinks, Ryan, we're talking about this. First team to 100 is the feeling to what we're talking about here, where we could, as you mentioned in the Big 12 championship, you can find a game where it's a 53-51 margin.
Either could happen. And honestly, at the end of the day, nobody's going to care if the team wins. Yeah, exactly. Score, beat them 1-0 or 199. It doesn't matter. Move on in advance. Listen, BYU's got a great fan base. Like, I remember the football games against you guys. Like, I know it's a sharp fan base, a great team. Like, I'm kind of terrified by it, but I'm terrified by it because I respect the team that BYU has. So it's going to be a really good game.
Yep.
And it's probably going to end in heartbreak for one of our fan bases.
You'll see a lot of royal blue in the stands at the ball arena. It's a relatively short drive for Cougar fans from Utah, short flight as well, 8-hour drive, an hour and 20-minute flight. And with BYU winning, I am expecting a lot of Cougar fans who may have been like a little cautious about round one. They're going to be all in. It should be a fun dichotomy of the red versus the blue. It should be a really, really fun matchup. But Ryan, thanks for carving out some time. Excited for this one, and stay tuned for post-game reaction once this one goes final. And as always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars and Locked On Badgers your first listen of the day right here on the Locked On Podcast Network.